near bridge of brick, and the persons who haunted the far on of stone. Those of lowest character prefer the former, adjoining the town. They did not mind the glare of the public eye. They had been of no account during their successes, and though they might feel this the, dispirited, they had no sense of shame in their ruin. Instead of signing at their adversaries, they spat, and instead of saying the iron had entered into their souls, they said they were down in their luck. The miserables who would pause on the remoter bridge of a politer stamp, persons who did not know how to get rid of the very time. The eyes of his species were mostly directed over the parapet upon the running water below, while on on the town ward bridge did not mind who saw him so, and kept his back to parapet to survey the passer-by on this never the face the road, never turned his head coming footsteps, but sensitive on his own condition was the current whenever a stranger approached, as if some strange fish interested him, though every faint thing had been pushed out of the rivers years before. 3. In this passage, the author is trying to explain the difference between the construction of the two bridges, describe the way different sections of people like to dress, explain the variety of ways in which strangers can be treated, describe how people of different classes behave when unhappy. Explanation. Opening line of the passage. There was a marked difference of quality between the person, 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 personages and their feeling of the discontent who hunted near bridge of brick, and the personage who hunted the far on of stone. यो लाइनबाट बुझिन्छ कि लेखकले डिफ्रेन्ट क्लासेस अफ पिपुलको व्यवहार र डिसकन्टेन्ट बिचको फरक देखाउन खोजेका छन्। ब्रिक ब्रिज नजिकका मानिसहरू लोएस्ट क्यारेक्टर खुल्ला रूपमा आफ्नो असन्तुष्टि देखाउँछन्, सेम अनुभव गर्दैनन् र आफ्नो रुइनमा पनि कुनै इम्ब्रेसमेन्ट हुँदैनन्। स्टोन ब्रिजमा रहेका मानिसहरू पोलाइटर, सेन्सिटिभ, अधिक सेल्फ अवायर छन् र बाहिरी ओलबाट चाहिँ टाढा रहन्छन्। अवस्थाअनुसार पानी करेन्टमा चाहिँ ध्यान दिन्छन्। लेखकले चाहिँ कन्ट्रास्ट देखाउन खोजेका छन्, न कि ब्रिजको कन्स्ट्रक्सन, दृश्य वा स्ट्रेन्जरको चाहिँ ट्रिटमेन्ट। त्यसैले सही एन्सर हो डी, डिस्क्राइब हाउ पिपुल अफ डिफ्रेन्ट क्लासेस बिहेभ वेन अनह्याप्पी। बाँकी अप्सन ए टेक्स्टको चाहिँ मेन आइडिया चाहिँ सम्झिन भन्छ। स्याम्पल क्वेसन आइभी भन्छ, perhaps the most striking quality of statistic literature is its freshness, its originality of perspective. Satire rarely offers original ideas. Instead, it presents the familiar in new form. Statistics do not offer the whole new philosophies. What they do is look at familiar conditions from a perspectives perspective that makes these conditions seem foolish, harmful, or affected. Satire jars us out of complexes into a pleasantly shock realizations that many of the values we unquestioningly accept are false. Don Quixote makes chivalry seem absurd, brave, new, old, ridicules the pretensions of science. A modest proposal dramatize, dramatizes starvation by advocating cannibalism. Cannibalism. None of these ideas is original. Chivalry, chivalry was suspect before Cervantes. Humanities, humanists objected to the claims of pure science before Aldous Huxley, and people were aware of famine before Swift. It was not the originality of the idea that made these satires popular. It was the manner of expression, the hysteric method that made them interesting and entertaining. Satires are read because they are aesthetically satisfying works of art, not because they are morally wholesome or ethically instructive. Instructive ones. They are stimulating and refreshing because with common sense, briskness, that briskness they brush away illusions and second-hand opinions. With spontaneous, irreverent satire rearranges perspectives, scrambles and familiar objects into incongruous juxtaposition and speaks in a personal idiom instead of abstract platitude. Satire exists because there is need for it. It has live because readers appreciate a refreshing stimulus and irreverent reminder that they live in all of platitudinous thinking, cheap moralizing, and foolish philosophy. Satire serves to prod people into uh, awareness of through truth, though rarely to any action on behalf of truth. Satire tends to remind people that most of what they see, hear, and read in popular media is sanctimonious, sentimental, and only partially true life resembles in only a slight degree the popular image of it. Soldiers rarely hold the ideals that movies attribute to them, nor do ordinary citizens. Devote, devote their lives to unselfish service of humanity. Intelligent people know these things but tend to forget them when they do not hear them express. Formasa, what does the passage mainly discuss? Difficulties of writing satiric literature. Bima छ popular topics of satire, new philosophies emerging from static literature, reason for the popularity of satire, explanations भन्छ। यो प्यासेजको पर्पोज मुख्य विचार पत्ता लगाउन सुरुका दुई प्याराग्राफको फर्स्ट सेन्टेन्समा ध्यान दिनुपर्छ। पहिलो प्याराग्राफको ओपनिङ लाइन्स, परह्याप्स the most striking quality of satiric literature is its freshness, its originality, originality of perspective। यसले चाहिँ सटायरको चाहिँ मुख्य गुण, यसले कस्तो नयाँ दृष्टिकोण चाहिँ दिन्छ भनेर देखाउँछ भन्छ। दोस्रो प्याराग्राफको चाहिँ फर्स्ट सेन्टेन्स, सटायर एक्जिस्ट बिकज देयर इज नट फर इट, it has lived because readers appreciate a very refreshing stimulus and irreverent reminder that they live in world of platitudinous thinking, cheap moralizing and foolish philosophy। यसले स्पष्ट रूपमा देखाउँछ कि सटायर किन लोकप्रिय छ र यसको आवश्यकता किन छ। ती सेन्टेन्सहरूको रिक्युरिङ थिमले देखाउँछ कि टेक्स्टले सटायरको लोकप्रियता र यसको कारणहरू चाहिँ बारे चर्चा गरेको छ। त्यसैले सही एन्सर डी हो, रिजन्स फर द पपुलारिटी अफ सटायर। बाँकी अप्सन एबिसी टेक्स्टको मुख्य फोकस समेट्दैन भन्छ। स्याम्पल क्वेसन बी, इफ three families had family trees, the wake would have one of the oldest and grandest of all. There are more than 500 different species, and over the last million years they have spread in various shapes and forms over most of the northern half of the earth. There are mountains wakes, swamps wakes, evergreen wakes, weeping wakes, and wakes on windswept cliffs that never reach more than 2 or 3 feet in height. One kind in Spain has such a break that it is used to make cock. So there are soft wakes too, but for most of us, wake means just one kind of tree. The rag giant that has played such a part in history and legend and been so important in the old woodlands of Europe and North America. त्यस्तै, perhaps we have been unfair to others trees, but the forest wakes deserve their fame. They are hardy, easygoing, and not all fussy about whether they grow. They can reach a great age, even thousands of years, though most are cut down long before this. Their squat trunks and twisted branches, looking like clenched wooden muscles can stand up to the worst kinds of weather. On top of all this, timber cut from oaks is as strong and remarkable as the trees themselves. It is solid and hard wearing, as good for furniture as it is for firewood. Before the days of steel and concrete, it made the frames of houses and ships. If we had to invent a new kind of timber, it would be hard to think of anything better. It isn't just a human who find wax the most useful of trees. Over the ages, a huge number of animals and plants have learned to live off and in the wakes. It is tempting to say that a full ground wake is like a house, but it is really more like a city, a whole community, community of creatures traveling, working, eating, sleeping, singing, and bringing up young on every part from the topmost spring birds to the deep gas blasted out by a lighting flash, भन्छ आउट अफ लाइटिङ फ्लास त्यस्तै अब छ which statement is closest to the main idea expressed in the first paragraph that there are varieties of wakes. B मा छ those trees like wakes are family trees. C मा छ most people think that there is only one type of wake. D मा छ the best kind of wakes found in Spain. Explanation भन्छ option A accurately reflects the main idea of the first paragraph. The paragraph lists various types of wakes and highlights their diversity. The first paragraph introduced the idea that there are over 500 different 500 different 500 different भन्छ 500 different 500 different species of wake trees is adapted to various environments and across the northern hemisphere. This statement uh, encapsulates the main theme of the paragraph, which is the diversity of wake trees भन्छ बीमा छ इस्युज रेज क्वेसन्स भन्छ इस्यु रेज क्वेसन्समा प्यासेजमा चाहिँ उठाइएका प्रब्लम्स कन्सर्न्स वा टपिक्सबारे सोधिन्छ यसमा की च्यालेन्जेस डिबेट्स वा इस्युज पत्ता लगाउनु बुझ्नुपर्ने हुन्छ इन्फ्रेन्सियल क्वेसन जस्तै यसमा पनि जानकारीको आधारमा चाहिँ कन्क्लुजन्स वा इन्फ्रेन्सेस निकाल्नुपर्छ जुन एक्सप्लिसिटली स्टेटेड हुँदैन उत्तर दिनुपर्दा चाहिँ प्यासेजमा प्रस्तुत मेन पोइन्ट्स र अग्रुमन्स एनालोगी र इभिडेन्समा ध्यान दिनुपर्छ इभिडेन्समा चाहिँ ध्यान दिनुपर्छ भन्छ त्यस्तै how to identify the questions भन्छ how is the information in the passage organized त्यस्तै how is the information in the second paragraph related to the information in the first paragraph त्यस्तै by presenting the example of XYZ the passage author implies that why does the writer include this evidence analogy in paragraph X2 where to find the answer to this type of questions can generally be determined by looking at the first sentence of the appropriate paragraphs and find the subject it is hinting at how to answer the questions हरेक प्याराग्राफमा चाहिँ पहिलो लाइन पढेर भन्छ सब्जेक्ट र इक्जाम्पल पत्ता लगाउनुहोस् र त्यसपछि ओर्स जसले चाहिँ रिलेसनसिप देखाउँछन् ध्यान दिनुहोस् र सबैभन्दा चाहिँ मिल्ने एन्सर छान्नुहोस् भन्छ read the first line of each paragraph locate the subject trace the example look for words that show relationships भन्छ choose the answer that best express the relationship अब छ sample question भन्छ read the passage provided in the section officers entrance exam in the year 2074 BS and respond to the questions using the trick you have learned above. Admiration of great men, both, both of our own time and of the past, is a valuable emotion and a stimulus to useful activity to young men of vigor and enterprises. The achievements of predecessors are an encouragement and a proof of what is possible to achieve. But if this good effect is to result from administration, it is necessary that the men who are admired should be regarded as something that is that it is possible to equal by means of sufficient exertion, not as a something outside our capacity. It is possible to use the great men of the past as an excuse for laziness by assuming that why they thought was perfect for all time and need never be re examined. This attitude is defended by those who adopt it, who call it reverence, reverence and condemn, condemn, condemn all modern initiative as this disrespectful reverence in this has been a misfortune to the human race. One of the most outstanding examples of the harm done by excessive and reverence is the influence of Aristotle for a brief period in the 11th and 12th centuries, when the West rediscovered him through contact with the Arabs. His writing acted as an intellectual stimulus, but very soon he became the canon of orthodoxy, and no advance could be made except by showing the falsehood of what he had said once. Showing reverence to the great men also implies that the young men tend to be lazy. The great men were unquestionable and perfect. सीमा छ. The good effect on young men is the result of admiring great men. डीमा छ. The men who are admired are always great. एक्सप्लेनेसन. यो प्यासेजले देखाउँछ कि ग्रेट मेन प्रति एक्सेसिभ रिफरेन्स राख्दा मानिसहरूले चाहिँ उनीहरूको विचारलाई अनक्वेसनेबल र पर्फेक्ट मानेर क्रिटिकल थिङ्किङ वा पुनर्मूल्याङ्कन नगर्ने टेन्डेन्सी हुन्छ. फर्स्ट लाइन र रिलिभेन्ट इक्जाम्पल एरिस्टोटलको बारेमा चाहिँ छ. One of the most outstanding examples of the harm done by excessive reverence is the influence of Aristotle for a brief period in the 11th and 12th centuries, when the West rediscovered him through contact with the Arabs. His writing acted as an intellectual stimulus, but very soon he became the canon of orthodoxy, and no advance could be made except by showing the falsehood of what he said. यी लाइन्सले चाहिँ कन्भे गर्छन् कि एक्सेसिभ रिफरेन्सले यङ मेन वा स्कलर्सलाई लेजी वा इन्डिपेन्डेन्ट थिङ्किङ नगर्न प्रेरित गर्न सक्छ. यसले चाहिँ बताउँछ कि एडमायर मेनलाई ब्लाइन्ड रेस्पेक्ट गर्नु क्रिटिकल एनालाइसिस रोक्छ र उनीहरूको चाहिँ आइडियाजलाई बियोन्ड स्क्रुटिनी मानिन्छ भन्छ। त्यसैले सही एन्सर बी हो। द ग्रेट मेन वेयर अनक्वेसनेबल एन्ड पर्फेक्ट। हरेक प्याराग्राफको चाहिँ फर्स्ट लाइन र इक्जाम्पलमा फोकस गर्नुहोस् भन्छ। किवर्ड्स वा प्याराग्राफ खोज्नु जसले रिलेसनसिप वा इस्यु हाइलाइट गर्छ भन्छ। सिम्पल क्वेसन भित्रलाई read the passage provided in the section officer and entrance exam in the year 2078 BS and respond to the questions using the trick you have learned above. At first, the use of fragrances was primarily associated with healing aromatic alcoholic waters were ingested as well as used externally fragrances were used to purify the air for both for both for spiritual and health purposes. During the Black Death, the bubonic plague was thought to have resulted from a bad odor, which could be averted by inhaling pleasant fragrances such as cinnamon. The Black Death led to an aversion to using water for washing, and so perfume was commonly used as a cleansing agent. Later on, the craft of perfume re-entered Europe and was centered in Venice chiefly because it was an important trade and route and a center for glassmaking, and having such materials in hand was essential for the distillation process in the late 17th century. Trade soar in France when Louis XIV brought in policies of protect, protect, protectionism and patronage, which stimulated the purchase of luxury goods. Here, perfumery was the preserve of glove makers. The link arose since the tanning of leather required putrid substances, and consequently the gloves were scented before they were sold, and on a glove and perfume makers guild had existed here since 1190. Interning in required 7 years of formal training under master perfumer. Why does the writer include this sentence in paragraph 2? During the Black Death, the bubonic plague was thought to have resulted from a bad odor which could be averted by inhaling pleasant fragrances such as cinnamon. To explain why washing was not popular during the Black Death, to show how improper use of perfume caused widespread disease, to illustrate how perfumes used to be ingested to treat disease, to give an example of how fragrances were used for health purposes. Explanation. यो इस्यु रेज इन्फरेन्सियल क्वेसन हो। प्रश्न सोध्छ कि लेखकले प्याराग्राफ 2 मा यो सेन्टेन्स किन समावेश गरेका हुन्। ड्युरिङ द ब्ल्याक डेथ द ब्युबोनिक प्लाग वाज थ्रो टु ह्याभ रिजल्टेड फ्रम अ ब्याड अडर which could be aborted by inhaling pleasant fragrances such as cinnamon. Explanation in Nepali with English words भन्छ। यो सेन्टेन्सले देखाउँछ कि हिस्टोरिकल कन्टेक्स्टमा फ्रेग्रेन्स जस्तै सिन्नामोनलाई हेल्थ पर्पजका लागि प्रयोग गरेको थियो। मानिसहरूले सोचेका थिए कि प्लाग्यु ब्याड अदर्सबाट फैलेको थियो र प्लिजेन्ट फ्रेग्रेन्सेसले त्यसबाट बस्न वा असर कम गर्न सकिन्छ। यसले पर्फ्युमको चाहिँ मेडिसिन वा प्रोटेक्टिभ युज देखाउँछ। यहाँ चाहिँ हाइडन मोटिभ भनेको चाहिँ फ्रेग्रेन्सेसको थेरापेटिक रोल देखाउनु हो, न कि डिजिज फैलाउने वा अन्य कारण हो। त्यसैले सही एन्सर हो डी, टु गिभ एन एक्जाम्पल अफ हाउ फ्रेग्रेन्सेस वेयर युज फर हेल्थ पर्पजेस। प्याराग्राफको फर्स्ट लाइन र रिलेभेन्ट इक्जाम्पलमा फोकस गर्नुहोस् र किवर्ड्स र रिलेसनसिप्स पत्ता लगाउनुहोस् र हिडन मोटिभ र पर्पज बुझेर सबैजना मिल्ने एन्सर चाहिँ छान्नुहोस् भन्छ यहाँ चाहिँ ल।